tell you a little bit about myself. You know, as Judy mentioned in the bio and the background, there's some cool things I've done. But, you know, really what's missing from an introduction like that is the essence of who I am and the essence of the experience and the background. And a lot of what I had that helped shape the career path, helped shape the business roles and the business decisions, started way back 20 plus years ago with a strong interest in those principles of success and goal achievement. And, you know, I started studying these things, you know, when there were cassette tapes running around, you know, driving in my car. Anybody do that? Anyone listen to audios as they're driving? You remember cassettes? So your kids will look at you like you're crazy, right? Soon they won't even know what a DVD or a CD is, right? Because everything's totally, you know, MP3s and, you know, who knows what's coming next, right? This is the speed of digital world and technology. But, you know, I would listen to these things in the car. I was listening to Jack Canfield, you know, 20-something years ago. It was awesome. And by studying the principles of success, by beginning to apply these ideas. How many folks read a book and say, wow, there's some really good stuff in there, but then never actually did anything with it? Right? So when you actually apply the methods that we talk about, they work. Now, today's conversation is also about the science of success, why some of these things work, because people are interested in that. And in some cases, just know that they work, trust the process, and go for it, whether you understand exactly why that's the case or not. Because if there are things that people have already figured out work for whatever it is your goals are, then why not follow them with absolute dedication and commitment? Does that make sense to you? You know, so there's a number of things that I've studied over time. There were about 2 or 3 years of a program that I did called the Institute of Success and Goal Achievement, where I would interview people who were super successful or had some skill that would help the audience be successful, and I broadcast this over the internet. And you know, as a result, interviewed, I forget the number, something like 120 people. Really diverse backgrounds. There were people in there who were job networking experts. There were people in there who had started their own businesses. And one of the guys that I interviewed is a friend of mine now named Sean Gallagher, was one of the top entrepreneurs in Ireland. He ran for president in Ireland in 2011. This is one of the interviews I have. I mean, there's really cool people that I have the opportunity to network in. And there were a number of patterns, a number of things that I learned from listening to these successful people, either from going to seminars and reading books or networking and talking and meeting folks and interviewing them. And these patterns that started to come to surface for me were things that I would try and work out and do. And the ones that worked extremely well, I did more. The ones that didn't work so well for me personally, I didn't do more. But what emerged was this set of things that I realized work. And I'll tell you that when you do what works, life becomes so much easier, no matter what it is you're striving to achieve. Does that make sense to you? So here's what's really cool. My business, Win Enterprises, is helping the business leaders out there in the world. You know, it is working with corporate companies and small business owners, and a lot of corporate groups. As Judy mentioned, you know, the largest company I worked with was $80 billion. It was an English company, so it was translated from pounds to dollars, but holy cow, can you imagine that much money? You know, in the US, the largest one I worked with was like $26 billion. Wow. You know, the phone rings. Hi, we're the corporate strategy team at 3M. Can you come help us? Okay. That's a cool phone call to receive. Think about the networking. Think about getting your name out there as one of those key success principles. You do the right things, your phone will start ringing. That was an out of the blue phone call. I love those. How many of you would love your phone to ring and have the person who can help you achieve the goal that you're ready to achieve say, hey, just calling to see if I can make your goal come true, right? Awesome. That will happen. That's part of what just magically starts to happen here. The book, Act Now, is the process that I have learned to follow. And I will tell you, when I am following this methodology, I accomplish more than any other period of time. And it's simple, and it's chunked down into 90 days. We get the process to work in smaller bites because people get overwhelmed. Oh, everybody's got this goal that I want $1 million in the bank. What do you got now? Nothing. So you're going to do that this year? Well, maybe. It's not impossible. But let's chunk that down. Well, what can we do in the next 90 days? And that's what Act Now helps you to do. And it really gets you geared up to know what to do and how to do it. It gets you so that you're following the steps. So dailyactionlog.com and winenterprisesllc.com, you can learn more in detail on those two websites. In fact, there's a lot of goodies in each of those websites that you can download for free. So do visit and spread the word about them. Now, I mentioned Jack Canfield as one of my mentors. Audio cassettes 20 years ago, driving in the car, listening to goal setting and some of the different processes and following those along. And I've actually also supported Jack at his seminars. I've gone through the Breakthrough to Success training that he does, graduated through his Train the Trainer program, and I've supported as part of his team as the staff or the facilitating group in his trainings, which is an awesome experience, being in the back of the room and then helping the participants after I've gone through as a participant. I've gotten to know Jack fairly well. Jack wrote the foreword to Act Now, which is cool. Now this book, The Success Principles, awesome. 64 principles that Jack distilled down into a book of what it takes to be successful at whatever it is you're shooting for. How many people here have read this book? Raise your hand. What are you waiting for? Holy cow! Come on, let's get on it. Think about this. Here's a guy who's figured out what works and put it in a book for you. Right? You can study the book and figure out what's going to work for you. Now, here's what's interesting. Jack learned the set of principles from a guy named W. Clement Stone. W. Clement Stone was, in today's dollars, would be uber rich. Built an incredible, successful insurance company from nothing. One of his pals was a guy named Napoleon Hill. Now, Napoleon Hill was the author of the book Think and Grow Rich. You familiar with that one? A few more yeses. Raise your hand if you've read that book. If you didn't raise your hand, what are you waiting for? This is an amazing book. It is all about the mindsets and the things that you can do, basically programming your brain. Now, when he wrote that book, we didn't know some of the whys, some of the science behind why this stuff works, but it works. You know where Napoleon Hill got the information from this book? There's your clue, right? Andrew Carnegie, who, at this point, basically retired, richest man in the world. Napoleon Hill, a young guy in his 20s, interviewing him. And Napoleon Hill kept dropping these little hints to see if he could pick up on them. And he did. He's like, you're trying to tell me something here. What is it? And he says, okay, this is great. Listen, here's what I'm going to do. If you're willing to invest the next 20 years of your life studying what the most successful people do and boiling it down into the answer of how these folks started with nothing and became super, super, super successful. These are the magnets of the Industrial Revolution. These are like Teddy Roosevelt, President of the United States, right? And he said, sure, I'm not doing anything for the next 20 years. I'll be happy to take on this project. And as a result, from studying the most successful, Carnegie set it up, interviews. Here, meet this guy, meet this guy, meet this guy. And just talk to them about what do you do? How did you come into this country with a few dollars in your pocket? On the boat back in those days, right? You gave up everything, you came here, and you turned into the person you are. He wrote the answer. Would you want to know that answer? It's in Think and Grow Rich. So Think and Grow Rich came from, basically the same philosophies that Andrew Carnegie used to become the richest man in the world. So you trace back what I'm telling you about today. This lineage goes right back to some pretty influential people. Would you agree? Does that make it interesting to hear today? So one of the things in Think and Grow Rich, I boiled down what I call the Napoleon Hill formula as C plus B equals A. Simple. C plus B equals A. And the way it comes out in the book, what the mind can conceive and believe, it can achieve. And there's some other elements to this that are important, because you have to also be crystal clear what it is you want. What is that clarity? What's the burning desire that's firing you up, your passion? It's not enough just to want something maybe a little bit. You put your heart and soul into it. And then in order to achieve, you do have to take action, because it's not going to work otherwise. You've got to do something. Yes, it's true you think and grow rich, but you think and do the programming. And part of the thinking is planning what you're going to do, and then you have to do something. Now that's where Act Now comes in. Act Now is talking about how to take the different types of action, because there's not just one type of action. We'll talk about that today. How to take the different types of action so that you are essentially leveraging the thought processes that you develop from a Think and Grow Rich standpoint, and then do what needs to get done.